It had been foggy during the night because we did a call during the night, and by the time I left work, though, the fog seemed to be lifted, and it was, I guess, just a fairly ordinary morning. You could see little patches of fog here and there. You could tell there was a low ceiling because there was little patches here and there that you were driving through, but nothing that was really on the ground. You know, you always think of it as it's going to be, oh, you probably see where you see cars ahead of you, or it might be just a wall you'll drive through and whatever. And I moved over into the passing lane because I had a transport behind me. It was a ways behind me, but it was there, and I thought, well, I'll move over. And when I actually reached the fog, it's like I drove into a white wall, like a marshmallow. I could see nothing.
It was sunny. I mean, just beautiful. And all of a sudden, it's like you cross over the line. Like if you cross over this line here, it just turned pitch black. You couldn't even see your hand in front of your face.
I don't think I was even going 10 kilometers an hour because I couldn't see where I was going. All I knew is I couldn't stop. And I didn't realize at that time there was a car behind me that was right up on my tail end trying to follow me, I guess maybe following my lights. And when I moved far enough ahead, I stopped my car, and it was a girl behind me, and she stopped her car, and we both got out. But at that point, I said, like, we can't stand here. And it wasn't me, I'd say 15, 20 seconds after we got out of our car, that transport that was behind me slammed into the cars we had just gone around, so close that when that transport hit that pile of cars, the glass just rained down on us. So, and it was just so loud. I'll never forget that sound. It felt like, you know, if you're going to look up, you're going to see a transport in your face.
And that's when we slammed into something. It was a car. Then another car slammed into us, and another one, and another one, and then they start piling up on top of our car, like boom. You know, it was no warning, no signs. The whole highway, everybody was just screaming. Everything just went haywire then.
We couldn't see it. I think that's the scariest part. We couldn't see what was coming. I think I knew, and you'd hear one crash after another, and you could hear it getting a little more distant each time, so I knew it was getting further and further back, but I had no idea at that time how far up ahead of us there was wreckage as well.
In the front came through, and I got them over the seat, and I grabbed her. He grabbed Mark, and I grabbed Marquita, and I felt my way around the car, and it was like I was blind, feeling cars, going in between cars, jumping over cars, dragging her. We were just running for our life. I just heard a lot of explosion and screaming, and a van was tumbling, and it pinned me from the hips down and caught her from the chest down. And she kept saying, she called me Mama Sheila. She said, please don't let me die. I'm only 14.
Oh, I could hear that girl screaming. I didn't know who it was, but I could hear the screaming going on, and I could hear, you know, people screaming and yelling and trying to. I could hear. It's hard to know. I can't remember what was being said. I could just hear it.
There was nothing anyone could do. I mean, by the time I got there, there were several of the public that were trying to get to her, but then with the fire and the way that the vehicles had collided, and I hear after that what happened was when they jumped out of the vehicles, but vehicles were still impacting one another, and she became trapped between two cars in an upright position. And that was it.
There had been, up until the time, just as I was arriving, there had been attempts to save a couple of people who were in vehicles or outside of vehicles. A young girl in particular, 14-year-old girl, she was pinned between two vehicles. There were attempts made to save her, and just as I got there, the fire had gotten to her, and she couldn't be saved.
What I could see in my immediate area anyways, it was just piles of metal, twisted cars and trucks, and some over, you know, halfway over top of others. And
the first thing that I saw coming up was that there was a plume of black smoke going straight up in the air. That's the first I saw. then as I got closer, then you could hear the tires that were exploding and so forth.
I don't know. I guess my first instinct was to try and find people. I was okay. There was nothing wrong with me, so I was trying to find people.
Fire departments, I remember, were having a rough time getting to some of the fire.
So they're pumping water out of ponds off of fields. They're trucking it in by water tender, tanker. They got the big lagoons they set up.
Oh God, there was fire, there was burning rubber, there was, there was explosions going on as the truck tires were popping and car vehicle popping and gas tanks blowing. And I guess it was almost like you'd say like it was a war zone type thing, with everything taking place at the time.
I did find the man in the car that was wedged underneath the truck. I stuck with him. I triaged the other ones who were not serious, and I had somebody stay with them, but I got to him, and of course he was in the worst shape of all. He was seated in his car in the driver's seat, and his car was wedged underneath the transport, and that rear cross member on the transport trucks was right up here. So he had hit that with his face, and you could tell with the facial injuries that he had hit that. So his car had buried itself underneath that truck. Actually, for me, having gotten him out of there alive into the hospital was the only positive thing that day for me. So when he died 2 weeks later, that was tough.
The carnage was, I don't know, almost undescribable, and then we still had deceased people that were on scene in vehicles. It was hard to comprehend, and I think that to me after, because you're so busy doing what you have to do and you're doing your duties and, doing what you're trained to do and what you're supposed to be doing. And then after it's over and you sit back and you look at this thing, you say, my God, this could have been a hell of a lot worse than what it was, unbelievable. Just unbelievable.
It was a unique situation for drivers that I personally would not have wanted to be in, because you can sit back and armchair quarterback this over and over again and say, well, what should you do? Well, I wouldn't want to put myself there.
I'm here, and I'm trying to live it down, but it's been rough. But I'm doing so much better.
He wasn't supposed to die, so I guess that's when I realized that things do affect you a lot more than you think they do.
You're never trained for that, and you never get callous to that. Like I say, you can see a lot of devastation in that, but when you bring in the human factor and the suffering of people, nothing can prepare you for that. No training, I don't know. There's nothing. It's something that I hope no one ever has to witness.
The thing is, I hear so many people, I've heard about so many cases of people being involved in car accidents, and they'll say, oh, it wasn't my fault, the fog was so thick like pea soup, or it wasn't my fault, there was just a crazy blizzard that just came out of nowhere, or it was raining like a car wash. People, they'll blame it on the weather and say, well, it was the weather that caused that crash. No, the weather does not cause car accidents. What causes car accidents? A, people driving too quickly for the road conditions, and B, people following each other too closely. I see it all the time. I haven't owned a car for 7 years now. And the initial reason why I got rid of my car was that it was just costing me too much money. It's too freaking expensive to own a car. Like, a car is just, it's an endless money pit. But another thing that not driving has made me realize is how much I don't miss driving. Driving is no longer a pleasure. I don't know what the hell it is with people out there now. Like, everyone's in a hurry, and so many people are so bloody selfish, riding your ass, tailgating you, cutting you off, not signaling, not staying in their lane properly, like just people just driving badly and thinking they own the frickin' road, and doing everything like Facebooking and Instagramming and Snapchatting and emailing and texting, and doing everything while they're behind the wheel except driving. That driving is just no longer fun. It's no longer a pleasure. Driving to me is now a pain in the butt. And it's just become way too dangerous out there. Like, I've heard that section of the 401 where this crash occurred, approximately 15 kilometers or 10 miles east of Windsor, Ontario, Canada. The section of the 401 from Windsor, Ontario to London, Ontario, it's been nicknamed Carnage Alleyway because of the number of people who have been injured and killed in car accidents through that stretch of the highway. I've driven on that section of the 401 numerous times, and I can tell you from experience, there is nothing wrong with that section of highway. It's a matter of fact, at times it can actually be a nice peaceful drive. It's not the section of highway that's the problem. It's the idiots on the highway that are the problem. People need to slow down and follow the speed limit. Under ideal road conditions, you should be following the speed limit. But if the road conditions are less than ideal, fog, rain, snow, ice, smoke, dust, any kind of conditions that make it less than ideal for driving, means you should be going below the speed limit. Drive as slow as you need to drive in order to remain safe out there. Increase your following distance. Like, I don't know how anyone in their right mind could think that it's okay to only be like 3 feet or 1 meter from the vehicle in front of you if you're doing 100 kilometers an hour or otherwise 60 miles an hour. That's not a proper following distance. Use some common sense. And for those people that don't have any common sense, get off the road. You don't belong on there. People need to smarten up and start living more, being more careful, being more safe. You're not just jeopardizing your own life, you're jeopardizing the life of the other people in your vehicle, as well as all the other road users around you. Just smarten up and use your head. It's not rocket science.